Hey everybody, welcome to Bridging the Gap. This is Cheryl and
Roger.
And today we decided to do something a little bit different. We're going to tackle some of the comments that we've seen on some of our previous videos. So we want to address those, answer some questions, and kind of have an open discussion on some of the topics that were presented or some of the questions.
Feedback is good. Like we said from the beginning, this is not intended to be a monologue, but a dialogue. And so as we're diving into what took place at Asan Manso and at the dungeons, we want to pay attention to the things that are the feelings that are being evoked, brought up out of people, and things that are being discussed, and give people something to think about and talk about. So before we get started, I have a little bit of a bone to pick with y'all. She don't know I'm going to say this. I always got to do this. I got a bit of a bone to pick with y'all. How come nobody ever tells me I look nice? I see how many comments about how beautiful my wife is. Y'all giving a brother a complex.
Really?
You are giving me a complex. I'm going to have to start working out twice a day so I can... Okay. All right. I'm just playing. I have to harass her. She's used to it, but it puts her on the spot. She's probably blushing right now. You blushing?
No.
No, not even a little bit?
No.
Well, I knew I was going to get comments today because of how she dressed. The beautiful African queen garb. I knew it was coming, so I'm going to preempt some of that.
I got this from Ghana on our first visit from the market. One of the markets. I don't remember the name of the market, though.
The first market we went to? Yeah. I don't know the name of it either. Yeah. But she is beautiful, so I'm just playing. I don't need none of that. Don't want none of that. I'm just joking. As you hang around, you see I ain't got much sense unless we're really talking about serious stuff. So now that I've been silly and got that out of the way, we want to talk about some of the questions and comments that have been brought up. So we're going to start with one that I can't believe we didn't cover early on. Somebody asked, what does ago ame mean? You want to cover that one?
I don't think I remember the official definition, but I know it was to get our attention.
Yeah. So we were on the bus, on one of the tour buses, and the tour guide was talking, and they did a lot of talking, so we didn't catch all of it. I think we were talking about something. We caught the tail end of it. He was explaining what ago and ame means. Long story short, if you've ever been in a room full of people and you're trying to get everybody's attention, this is a systematic way that they do it in Ghana. If the speaker says ago, everybody who hears him will say ame. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, hey, I need your attention. Okay, you have my attention. But for the people who didn't get it, when you hear all those other people say ame, that generally will grab their attention. So when they say ago, you say ame. If you have to say it one or two more times, that's usually it. And they fairly quickly have everybody focused and ready to move forward with whatever was being said. So,
so if somebody, I'm sure there's somebody that can tell us the exact meaning of those words in English, that would be helpful.
We would welcome that because the tour guide told us we didn't pay attention. Sorry. Yeah. But yeah, so we knew you were going to see that on the videos, and I don't know how we missed that. That's something kind of cool that we enjoyed there. Mm-hmm. When my wife is zigging me, sometimes I throw an ago at her. Try to get her attention. But that was a good question. It works. It works. It's handy, man. I like it. So we're going to start dealing with some of the comments that were made. And we're really going to kind of focus on the racial stuff because this is a very sensitive topic. And we know it's a painful topic and it's going to bring about some emotions for folks. So I want to start with something that is a full thread, a conversation between me and a guy named Kimberly Mensah, who is married. She's a white lady. She's commented on one of our videos, and she's married to a Ghanaian man. So I want to start with that. It's kind of a different perspective than what we're presenting in our videos. Kimberly said, what a powerful video. Thank you for sharing. We need more people doing this exact thing. I also am from the United States. Although I'm a white woman, I have married a Ghanaian man. My daughter and I visited Ghana for the first time in 2018, and our experience was wonderful. I felt better than I felt in years, and even though we were the only white people in the airport, I felt very peaceful, welcomed, and at home. I love everything about Ghana. I told my husband we need to move there because the United States he will never get the respect he deserves. I myself experienced a lot of physical issues in the States that went away when I was in Ghana. My husband has children there that are grown and they took us around. We are currently building our house. It is almost complete. I can't wait to make Ghana my home. I miss it so much. I love the people. When we went to the castle, it really hit us, although my daughter and I feel very strongly against how people are treated because of the color of their skin. We were actually in Ghana when the president made his comments. I think he was talking about S-hole comments. And to show you how people are there, to show you how people are there, nobody treated us any different. The other thing I noticed is it does not matter how much or how little someone in Ghana has, they will share with you. I responded, Kimberly, thank you for your input. We really appreciate it. The people of Ghana are so warm and welcoming. It's unheard of. It's good to hear that what I perceived in my true trips there really is true, that there is no reverse racism. That just makes me want to move all the more. I said, your husband will be well respected soon. She replied back, she said, that's so true. She said, they serve in a church with other Africans from various countries. And she said she feels so welcome at the church, just like she did in Ghana. She says, I love the culture, love the people, and they truly make you family. Said, I cannot imagine what you have to go through here. And from my perspective, everybody was welcoming and friendly, and I did not feel any negativity. She said, I have a channel set up and wanted to post our experience because we have been lied to. Material things are not everything. I am trying to encourage and educate those who have children in the school system to consider looking into moving. Now, that was a lot to unpack. You want to start with that, or you want me to start with it?
You can start.
Couple of things. As a white woman married to a black man, I can hear in her heart how she feels about how her husband is treated here in the States. She wants to move so her husband can be treated like the man that he is and be respected as the man that he is. But she also wants to move for something totally separate from that. And that is just how she is treated, not just by Africans in Ghana, but even the Africans in the church that they serve in. It's just a different culture. And as I said from the beginning, man, I don't do the race thing on either side. I can't stand it. It drives me nuts. And so to hear her say that the things that I saw, that we saw, we really, even though there were white people on our Jamestown to Jamestown tour with us, some of them married to black women, really didn't see anybody treat them any differently. And that is just as important to me as being able to go to Ghana and say, I feel at home and I don't feel like I'm being otherized, to know that, you know, people are people, man. This whole skin issue being the issue that it is a human issue. It is not a God thing. So the fact that she can say that, you know, she desires that for her husband, but she desires it for herself. Mm-hmm. To be in a place where people are just treated, as Malcolm would say, by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. That was powerful. I thought it was very important. Anything else you want to add on that one, Dave?
That was Malcolm or MLK?
That's in Malcolm. I meant MLK.
Okay.
One of them brothers who did big things back in the 60s.
Yeah, I think the other thing I picked up was she said how she just feels better there.
Right, that too. Physically,
health-wise, there's a difference. There's a difference. I don't know if it's the air. I don't know if it's because people are treating you well, that stress goes away, but you feel different. You feel physically different. And so that's huge. That's huge.
I'm going to say I think it's tied to the post-traumatic stress syndrome that we're all carrying and living in this country. Yeah. When you have that level of tension between the races carried on for this long a time frame, and then that goes away, I don't think any of us really know on a psychological, emotional level what that does to us physically, because we know, and we're going to share with you how emotions can mess with you physically. The things that you feel. We carry that tension in the States, and we see it on TV all day, every day.
I think it is. I think it's in the air. I think it's like a, don't want to say energy, something. It's in the air.
It is definitely an energy around this country that is everywhere you go in the country. Some places may be worse than others, but there's an energy of just tension because of skin color.
Yeah, that's not there.
That's just not there. Even though they have a right to be upset if they wanted to, they don't. It's just, I've seen no evidence of it. To hear her say what she said is like, okay, that's good confirmation that what we thought we saw is actually what takes place. So we thought that was important to share. And Kimberly, we appreciate you and your feedback. Your husband will be well respected, as I said, soon.
The next one.
Mike Fox. Mike said, bridging the gap. You seem like a lovely couple. Thank you, Mike. So wish you all the best. As a white guy, I find traveling to less westernized countries, the people are just generally more friendly and have better values than over here in the West. I naturally get stares in Africa when visiting different places, but doesn't particularly bother me as I feel more at home just because of the more personal nature of everyday life there, greeting strangers and whatnot. So I didn't even know these were going to be back to back. I didn't realize Mike was the next comment, but that just piggybacks off of what we were saying with Kimberly. This is a brother who travels a lot, and it sounds like he's been to several different African nations, and he's saying he feels at home.
So even though he said he gets stares, probably because
let's speak to that a little bit.
Not too many people look like him. So I think it's a natural thing to look when you see something different or someone who looks different.
Let's speak to
but
that
how
from
you
our
treat
vantage
them.
Point, from our vantage point, our first time there. What do you think? What do you feel?
I felt at home.
No, I'm talking about when you saw white folks in Ghana.
You want to know what I felt?
Yes.
I wonder what they were doing there.
Right.
I was like, what are they doing here?
At the Moving Pick in the Kempinski, these are 5-star hotels. The people that were there that were Caucasian, you pretty much knew they were there for business. They had their suits on. They got their laptops out at breakfast. But on the streets, walking around, there's so few white folks that you kind of wonder what, it's just different. Like, what are you doing here?
Right.
Not in a bad way, but literally curious. But to me, the fact that some of the people we saw a young man in Jamestown. Jamestown is, like I said, the hood on steroids, basically. We were having this Jamestown to Jamestown when we met the president and all this other stuff. He was outside of that, and he walked up to me and the brother I was talking to, African brother I was talking to, and asked, what's going on here? He was like deep in the hood by himself, walking around asking questions.
Like he belonged there.
100% comfortable. And I'm watching him interact with this Ghanaian brother, and he just answering his questions. It's like things that the racial tensions in this country are so thick. There's no way in the world you're going to the hood like that by yourself in America. You're not doing that.
Yeah.
And not unless you grew up there, unless you got a death wish. But it's not like that there.
I don't know if it's that bad.
In America?
Yeah.
In many, please. Yes. In many neighborhoods.
Maybe in this climate we're in now.
Especially in this climate that we're in now.
This climate we're in. I don't think it's always been that way.
It hasn't always been, but where we are now, baby, is dangerous.
Yeah.
You can't be white and go to the hood.
No.
You can't, not in this day and age. But, so when you see white folks on it, it's just a different thing. But it's not like, what are you doing here? Get out of here. You don't belong. It's just a different, it's like, whoa, that's interesting. And you wonder, what you want to know? Because I know that there are plenty of white folks out here who really genuinely want to understand other cultures. There are plenty of white folks out here who know what has been done to Africans by white folks and want to get a better understanding because they know what they're learning in school books is not telling them the whole story. Not everybody has ill motives. Matter of fact, I don't think most people have ill motives. The businessmen in suits probably there for reasons to continue to rape and pillage resources out of Africa. But the people on the street, they seem extremely comfortable. It's good to hear that they are comfortable, and you know, you don't look at them the same way you look at the businessmen in suits with the laptops. At least not me. So to have both of those perspectives from different people in what sounds like different parts of Africa, that is like I said, is heartwarming to me as it is to go home and know that I'm not going to be otherized. To be able to go to the continent and know that nobody's looking at me crazy for no reason other than the fact that I'm black. To know that they can be there and not feel what I feel here is important to me.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the difference is because you can go somewhere here in a predominantly white area, be black, and you'll get stares. But I think because of the history,
it's a whole different thing.
It's a whole different thing. So you either
it's a fearful stare. It is okay.
Yeah. What is this going to turn into?
Right. Yeah. I need to watch my back. I need to be extra sensitive. What I say, what I do, because you know you don't know what's going to come out of that. You don't know if the police are going to be called. If the police are called, what they've been told. If they're trigger happy, you know, you got so many different things running through your head when you recognize somebody in a predominantly white environment looking at you differently.
Especially shopping. Like if I go to certain stores, I'm making sure that it's obvious what's in my hands, what I'm walking with. It's crazy that you should have to do that because you don't want to draw attention or the wrong attention and have an issue.
I'm just sitting here processing you in a store having to deal with that. That doesn't even make. Look at her.
Yeah.
Look at her. Who's going to
I'm black.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
And that's a problem.
Especially if I'm not dressed a certain way. But even if you are dressed a certain way, you're still going to get the look. And you're still going to get, you know, I'm sure many people have been in the stores and every time you look up, that same person is seen to be just shopping everywhere you're shopping and watching you. Mm-hmm. And yet the other day I was in the store, there was this white guy. He was in, the line was closed. He was in, I think it was Big Lots. He was in the line taking stuff and just putting it in a bag. Just putting it in a bag. I'm like, he's stealing stuff. But nobody's looking at him, though. He is like packing up. It was interesting. But yeah.
The privilege is real. Let's just say that. In America, the privilege is real. I'm just glad that from the feedback we're getting from this channel to understand that that's not played out in reverse in Africa. Yeah. Because honestly, if it was, I wouldn't want to be there either. Mm-hmm. I just don't buy it either way. So, Mike, thank you. We appreciate your feedback.
Let's see what we got next.
Veronica Cobb, thank you for discussing this issue because I'm a lighter-skinned black person. For many years, I wondered if I would be accepted or have the same color issues like here in America. I'm what many call racially ambiguous, so I can blend in most places with mixed people. You and others are convincing me a journey to Ghana will be worth every dollar spent. Veronica, I replied to your comment. I absolutely do think a trip to Ghana will be worth every dime spent, every dollar spent. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about this skin color thing, even amongst our own, because it's real. And in the video, we forgot to attach to the last video. Kofi talked about it a little bit. You want to speak to that?
Yeah, he talked about, when the slave, what do you call people? Slave owners, slave masters, whatever they were. When they raped the women and the women got pregnant and they sent the women off, or they sent the woman and the child off, and she raised the child till she was 10 years old. One of the things they mentioned was that the children from that lineage, you kind of know who they are because of their lighter skin.
In Ghana today.
Ghana, yeah, today. So they kind of know that this is a result of those rapes. And it's the same thing here in America. The lighter skin is from slave owners, masters raping the women.
Right.
So a lot of times, I think even and when they talked about when they were doing the African ancestry results, that sometimes it's easier to trace your African heritage through the mother's line versus the father's, because in many instances, the father, if you trace it back far enough, it's going to be a white man.
So it's hard to trace African ancestry because somewhere along the line, if you're a lighter skinned person, there was a man there who.
Right. So it's easier for the mother on the mother's side to go back to Africa versus on the father's side in some cases.
Yeah. What I want to talk about is what Veronica said, because this issue and how they treated these babies in Africa and how things played out here has created a divide amongst us. We got light skin, dark skin issues. We can't even come together simply because of our own skin color within the members of the diaspora. But that was all by design. Everything was divide and conquer, right? So when you had slave owners that wanted to have slaves work in the house, 9 times out of 10, they used the lighter skinned slaves to work in the house, which made darker field slaves, jealous, angry, and we used to call them, the term house nigga. That's where that term comes from, because you were treated differently because of your skin color. Everything was a divide and conquer. What you're hearing from this young lady is saying she's still dealing with those issues today. And a concern about if she were to go back to the motherland, would she have to deal with those issues there? Veronica, I'm pleased to tell you that I don't think we have those issues. We've been there together as a couple, didn't see it. The white folks that you heard that have been commenting on the channel doesn't appear that they have those issues. I think if you go, it'll definitely be worth every penny you spend. But I think you'll have a different experience than what you have here in the States.
Yeah. And for those that may not be clear, when she's saying she's racially ambiguous, back in the day we say that's somebody who can pass.
Right.
Meaning you can pass for white.
Right.
So that's basically.
She lighter than Cheryl.
Probably a lot lighter.
Yeah, but much lighter. I'm just saying, to give people who don't understand, we know. But to give perspective, Cheryl's light skin, I would be considered dark skin. Cheryl couldn't pass.
I'm medium. I'm caramel.
She's caramel skin.
I'm milk chocolate.
Anyway, this young lady's several shades lighter than Cheryl, so she could literally probably in some arenas pass as being white. That's difficult. As a black person in America, I can only imagine the level of stuff she took. We get
from both sides.
Yeah. We get stupid stuff like, you talk white, you act white. I can't even imagine actually looking like I could be white and some of the stuff that she's heard. So that angst that she's talking about, it goes to the entire racial tensions that we carry in this country, which I think is exactly what Kimberly's saying. When she went to Africa, she just feels better because none of that stuff exists. So Veronica, go. If you can't get to go on your own, we're going to put together a tour probably in July. Come with us. Go put your feet on the continent and see if you don't feel better, because I think you will.
Did you have another one you want to read? Or
I think
they're all in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Stephen. Now, this was kind of deep, guys, so let me read through this. It says, one of the most compelling pieces of work I've seen since Hidden Figures. Thank you, Stephen. We appreciate that, brother. You silly. Says, thank you. I'm 47 and learned a long time ago that you can't reason with unreasonable people. It's a flaw in us blacks to even think that the whites want to have honest dialogue about crimes against humanity that in many ways they're still committing. They have the church over the dungeons because even they themselves knew that they had made up their own version of religion to manipulate and brainwash the masses. I've served this country in my city, my state since I was in my early 20s, only to never be totally included or fully respected. My kids are still more likely to be killed by the police for being black. It's unnatural to live under such conditions, but blacks do. We tolerate it. We allow their sick fear and perception of us to mold our behavior to simply comply and survive. I refuse to. I don't have any white friends because I can't find any of them honest enough to admit that they were and are sick monsters. And that's fine with me. I don't have to shuck and jive or scratch where it don't itch, or laugh when nothing is funny to coddle him. You can be as kind as you like. If you have knowledge of yourself, you're automatically an enemy of theirs. Belgium prides itself in its chocolates, little chocolate hands in particular. Why chocolate hands? Why such an odd little piece of candy? Look up King Leopold and find out. Like most serial killers, they're proud of their history and like to rub it in right under the noses of the ignorant who knows not his history. Sorry so long. I appreciate your videos. Can you leave that one up? I may want to refer back to it. Stephen, man, I get it. I feel where you're coming from, and I can't be mad at the positions you've taken and how you view things. I would just say this, man. Because somebody lies doesn't mean everything that they're twisting is a lie, right? We know that putting a dungeon on top, putting a church on top of a dungeon and treating people as they treated our ancestors, God's got nothing to do with that. Absolutely nothing to do with that. And what they taught us out of the ministry to keep us docile, the Leopold thing. You want to talk to that, Becky? Because didn't you look that up?
Not this particular thing he's talking about with the chocolate. I hadn't heard of that before, but there was a letter that he supposedly wrote to the Christian missionaries who were in Africa, and basically that said, you don't have to teach them about God. They know God, but just emphasize certain parts of Scripture that would keep them okay with being poor, wanting to be poor, not having anything, that kind of mindset. So drum that into them to keep them poor, basically, so they can go.
The meek shall inherit the earth.
Yeah.
Jesus was just a carpenter. He didn't even have a place to stay. They taught them that slavery was intended to be a permanent thing, lifelong thing. There was a slave Bible that they actually had in the United States that removed all parts of the Bible that talked about, indentured servitude coming to an end, which is what biblical slavery was. Things came to an end. Nobody was ever intended to be property forever. It's usually a debt that was being paid off is what it was.
And then it wasn't chattel slavery.
And it wasn't chattel slavery. You weren't you could have your own land. You could do things. It wasn't that. And then you came to an end where you into that period of time, which was typically 7 years. And then you can choose to become an indentured servant, or as Christ used to say, as Paul used to say, he is a bond servant of Christ. If you chose to stay after that 7-year time frame in the Bible, you chose to say, look, these people treat me extremely well. I want to stay here permanently by choice. Then you became a bond servant. It was never chattel slavery. So they absolutely twisted the word of God. They absolutely indoctrinated us with things that would keep us docile and not aspiring to better in life. But having said that, I commented on this post to you, and I'm going to say this here. Brother, I pray that you will keep an open mind and stay with us on this journey. I can promise you from personal experience, that's not all white folks. And there are white people out here who genuinely are concerned and will stand and fight this battle with us. And the reason we're doing this is because the Mikes and the Kimberleys are out there, and we got to have a dialogue. We got to have a discussion together. This cannot be a black issue. We can't fix this. If we don't have white counterparts who are willing to stand and fight, and they are willing to stand and fight, then we could. Then without them, we can't even address it. They're not going to listen to us.
Willing to fight and listen. That's the first step. Is listening. Listening.
Instead of telling us how we should feel about things, actually asking questions and listening to how we feel about things,
and believing us when we tell you something's going on.
And engaging on that.
Yeah.
You can't tell us what our experience is and how we should deal with what we've experienced when you know nothing about what we've experienced.
Right.
But I can tell you, brother, there's white brothers and sisters out here who are willing to walk that path with us and willing to stand back to back with you, shoulder to shoulder. in that fight. So I'm just going to ask you to continue on this journey with us because we intend to bring some of that to the forefront. All right? I want to say this before we read the next comment. Guys, we knew when we started this that it was going to be a tough conversation. We knew that comments like that, feelings like that would come up. And it's not easy for us to even to address. But you got to let that stuff, you got to put it out there. We got to talk about it. We got to work through it. And we got to try to bring about some different experiences from what we've experienced in the past because it is your experiences that have you feeling that way. And sometimes we allow our past experiences to prevent us from even experiencing anything different.
Yeah. And it's a process too. I think it's part of the journey. As you find out certain truths, you're going to get angry.
Absolutely.
You're going to get angry. And a lot of times that anger is going to be toward the people who look like the people who did certain things.
Right.
And so it's understandable that you get angry is just you can't stay stuck there. You got to move through that because that's only going to hurt you. If you are angry all the time, if you're walking around blaming and all of that, that's the low level, low frequency stuff.
Yeah,
that's going to keep you.
We'll talk about that
stuck
a little bit later, but we got to learn to forgive, man. I mean, bottom line is, and what you're hearing about the people of Africa, they're the most forgiving people on the planet. It's hard for us here in the States to have that level of forgiveness simply because we still deal with it on such a regular basis that it's easy to get caught up in, forget all y'all. We can't function like that, man. This is not anything God ever intended. This is a man-made issue. But I promise you, every man of that skin hue is not, tied to those same philosophies and thought processes. And we limit ourselves when we limit opportunities for relationship. All right. We appreciate your comment, though, man. Adrena. I'm enjoying this conversation with you guys. I've been pulled over twice here in San Antonio in the last 8 days for supposed driving offenses. I'm 33 and my dad and mom are Ghanaian, but they've been in the United States much of my life. My dad's a doctor, etc., and my stepmom an entrepreneur. Needless to say, I moved to San Antonio only 3 months and some days ago from Atlanta, which I've resided in most of my 33 years of life. I'm also a military veteran, etc. I was thinking to move out of the state some years from now, but I'm expediting the plan and praying that I make it happen in 2020 because I'm truly fed up. I'm even looking to cut my losses here in Texas, which is a decent state for the few things it's good for, to return to Atlanta to stack my money for my country relocation. But I'm torn about which country to move to, but I know I'll be happier than I've ever been once I'm permanently gone from the States. So glad you guys are enjoying your new life. I think we've put so much emphasis on black men's interaction with the police in America that we sometimes forget what black women go through. Not just even with the police. I'm going to say this. Here's the pecking order, folks. You got white men, white women, and black men. Some elite black men can hold a position of power. Then you got women as a whole who just don't get what white men get in this country. And then you got black women who's at the bottom of that total pole. They're female and they're of color. To have that, to be at the bottom of the pecking order in every arena in life, and then to have the police treat you that way. This young lady is, from what sounds like a pretty solid background, pretty solid home. Doctor, entrepreneur. She's a veteran herself. She moves to Texas. She's been here less than 3 months, pulled over by the police twice in 8 days. I'm not even sure what to say to comfort you in what you're going through. I will say that if you do decide to relocate out of the States, it's those are things you won't have to deal with. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality of it. But I want to encourage you to keep your chin up in the meantime. This too shall pass. I don't know. As a woman, is there anything you'd like to say to Adrena?
No, I can relate. I mean, I haven't been pulled over by the police since I've been here in Texas. The last time I was pulled over for whatever it was a while ago, and the climate wasn't what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
I think if I would be pulled over today, I would be extremely nervous, would be panicking, do I pull up a phone or what do I do? I'm definitely not pulling over on a dark street. They just gonna have to follow me to, a public place. I'm not comfortable with that at all. So I understand where she's coming from. And who wants to be harassed? You're just going about your day trying to handle everyday basic stuff. You shouldn't have to be harassed because she's probably driving a nice car or something.
Yeah, I don't know. All I can say is this. As a man, to hear my wife say that, that's troubling beyond belief. If I were to get pulled over tomorrow, it doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm not afraid of them. I'm not worried about them. I'm not thinking about the interactions. And maybe that's why I don't have many of them, because I've been pulled over and most of my interactions with the police are okay. But that's the climate we live in. To hear my wife say she feels that way, she can't even be pulled over for a traffic stop without that level of fear is unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable while we're looking at getting out of here. But for a single young lady, I really don't have any words for you. I wanted to acknowledge what you said. I really wanted to acknowledge that black women with dealing with police has got to be even harder than it is for us as men. And I get where you're coming from. And no, you will not experience that in Ghana.
Okay.
Point of correction. This is a good piece of feedback. It says, point of correction, at the 24-minute mark of our last video, Africans do take malaria pills or shots when we go back home. I don't know of any natural cures for malaria. I was born and raised in Liberia, contracted it many times while living there. We took conventional medicine to cure malaria. You want to speak to that, since you know more about it than I do?
Not really. I only know what... First of all, we got to make sure that when we're talking about something, we're talking about our experience in Ghana. So not all of Africa.
That's my fault. So before you speak to anything, let me take ownership of the last thing I said in the video. I said that Africans don't take malaria pills. That's not true. Ghanaians.
And it might not even be all Ghanaians.
Might not even be all Ghanaians. Yeah. A tour guide. Let's just get it all out here. A tour guide told us that that's not necessary in Ghana.
Right. And what they typically do.
We actually sat down with him at lunch and I was asking questions and he proceeded to tell us that they don't need medicine to deal with any feverish type condition that they have. What's it called? The neem tree?
Neem tree.
Right. Yes. He says there's neem tree all over the place, and he told us what you do with the neem tree. You ingest it, or
you can
you breathe it in.
Breathe it in. You can boil it in water and do a steam, like put a towel or something over your head. You steam, or take a steam bath. Make a tea out of it. There's different ways.
But he said they get anything that brings on a fever. They go pick it off the street, bring it in the house. He said in a day or two you're straight.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I personally believe that. I believe everything that we deal with.
God has given us
to heal
there's a natural cure for just about everything. Yeah,
because let me just say this, because most of the pharmaceuticals, they've taken the compound or whatever, they've basically tried to duplicate what's found in plants.
In nature.
So they can patent it.
Because you can't patent what God made, so they got to make something real close to it, patent it, and make a moneymaker out of it, and then try to do away with everything that's natural. Yeah. But I want to say this. We don't know what it's like in Liberia. There may never be any neem tree in Liberia. So we will be more careful about the things we say, because Ghana is not all of Africa. There's 54 countries in Africa. So I said all of Africa. I meant to say Ghana. And more specifically, that's just what our tour guide told us. We don't know everybody in Ghana, so we could be off base with that too.
And it could be different, the age groups, the generations. Like now, younger generations don't know about some of the home remedies that our grandparents used. My grandmother used to know how to go out in the field and pick certain, what we would probably call weeds, and treat certain things. They had ways of, they didn't take medicine like they do now, because at one point we didn't have access.
I tell you, go put that tussin on it, baby. We ain't taking no medicine.
That castor oil, or what is that, St. John's, something?
Vicks Vapor Rub, whatever it is. We ain't taking no medicine.
Even before that, they were making some kind of potions out of.
I think the elders, all of us can remember back to somebody older in our family, grandparents or great grandparents, who had a home remedy for just about everything.
And they worked.
Where do you think they came from?
Exactly. Okay. Now we're...
Got the last two?
Last two. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to read these two in succession, and then we're going to have a conversation about this and wrap this up, guys. Togbe Omega, I believe. I'm a Ghanaian and have never been to the castle in Asan Manso just because I didn't know the significance of it when I was in Ghana. Now I'm going to visit all of these places when I go back to visit family. Tobe, I recommend you do, brother. Evan says, good work done, my brother. Good education. Unfortunately, some of us who live here in Ghana have not seen the inside of the dungeon. Our school history books just mention this in passing. This is sad.
It is sad.
Lord Jesus. First of all, I appreciate you, brothers, for acknowledging you have to go. Yeah. You have to. It's right there in your backyard.
Well, let me just say this, because most people don't visit the so-called tourist attractions in their own town.
We take for granted the things that are close to us.
So it's understandable.
It is understandable. But it is critical that you go. Mm-hmm. In our couple of trips over there, I've had 3 different conversations with 3 different gentlemen who have been to the dungeons, all of Ghanaian descent. One who was born here, but his father lives there, Samuel Osei Sr. and Samuel Osei Jr. Both of them have been recently. Young man I sat on the plane with next to on our second trip, young man named Frank, also went within the last year or so. Bottom line is, Sam Sr.'s 70. I think he said he went a couple years ago at 68. Frank's in his early 30s, and Sam Jr.'s early to mid 30s. And Sam Jr. just went, when we got back from our second trip, he just went for his first real trip as an adult. Frank went a year before. Sam Sr. went a couple years ago. Every one of these brothers, as Ghanaians, said that experience as an adult changed everything about how they see the world. All 3 of them spent significant amount of time in the United States, so it's really easy for them to connect the dots as to what's going on here now when they stand there and literally see what our ancestors went through and stand where they stood. It is huge. I mentioned in the video that everybody in the diaspora needs to go once. Everybody in Ghana needs to go once. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they don't teach it in the school system where it actually happened.
But where'd the curriculum come from? I guess we're going to talk about that later.
We're going to talk about some curriculum. Here's what I'm going to tell y'all. I don't care what arena it is. If it's finances, if it's health and wellness, if it's medications, if it's slavery, I don't care what it is. If they're teaching it on a mass scale, it's a lie. Period. End of story.
With a little bit of truth sprinkled in.
You gotta have, for a lie to be believable, it's got to have a little truth sprinkled into it. It is a lie. And I will take that further. Religion as well. You cannot tell me Christ had anything to do with this mess. And we call this a Christian nation based on this, how this history, this beginning, God ain't got nothing to do with that. But they tell us things and they drill it over and over and over again to the point where you actually believe a lie and you don't even ask questions like, how did Christopher Columbus discover a place where there's millions of people? You can't discover something when there's people there. But you don't question those things. I encourage everybody to do your own due diligence. Mm-hmm. Gather your own information. Educate yourselves because they are not here to educate you. They are here to indoctrinate you. and you just heard it from a brother in Ghana who's never been to the dungeon simply because it's really not even talked about. They glaze over it in school. It's not that big a deal. No, it is a big deal.
Yeah. So it makes me wonder, and maybe someone of Ghanaian descent could answer this. Do they know that their ancestors were taken away and that they have family in other parts of the world?
I mean, if you're not teaching the kids about the dungeons and what took place, that's a good question. I don't know. We assume.
Well, they're saying welcome home.
Yeah.
There we go. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
But do they really know that there's...
Right. Do they really know the history?
Yeah.
I mean, we know that slavery took place.
Yeah.
Right? We had no idea. We've heard about the horrible conditions in the Middle Passage and the boats and all of that. But there's things that we've learned about slavery here in America.
Yeah. That
we didn't learn in school books, just we learning on this journey the last couple of 2 years. So if they're just glazing over the castles, how much are they really telling, the people? And this would be, please, we're asking, if you live in Ghana, if you're from Ghana, if you went into the school system in Ghana, went through the school system in Ghana, give us some feedback on this. This is something we'd really like to know more about, because we know what we got on this side of the pond, and it's nowhere near the truth.
Yeah. What were you taught? What were you taught about your ancestors that were there? I'm curious to know what they were taught.
And I'm curious to know, what were you taught about your ancestors that were transported here?
Yeah.
What did they tell you? That's a question I don't think we brought up with anybody in either trip.
Thinking about it now.
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be good to know. I will say this, though. Speaking of schools in Ghana, we've heard this from one of the former presidents of the African American Association of Ghana. We've heard this from other people who have moved to Ghana, that they have had children, school-age children, who were struggling in the States, that once they got to Ghana was a whole different ballgame. Something about the school system there, though they may not be teaching all of this in terms of the racial stuff and slavery and all of that. Well, I know what part of it is. Just being on the continent and how people function and the level of respect for elders and authority, that has to go a long way in helping the kid get his mind right in school. You're going to respect authority. You're going to respect your teachers, and you're going to do what you need to do because that is your job, is to go to school, right? We try to drill that into our kids here, but I can't remember who it was, but somebody was telling me their kids was really, really going through it here, getting in trouble and with the law, all kinds of stuff. In the teenage years, just the last couple of years of high school, changed everything about this kid by getting him there. I'm not going to say a name because I'm not sure who it was, but that was powerful to me. That's the difference it can make in a child's life, being in a more positive environment. It's not just going to affect the adults. It's going to affect the kids. It's probably going to affect them greater than it's going to affect you, because they're still developing. There's still a shot. So if you're dealing with something like that, thinking about relocating and putting your kids in a much more positive environment, can't be anything but helpful. I think that's the last one, huh?
Yep, that's the last one.
Guys, we really do appreciate your feedback. We may not get a chance to respond to everything, which, by the way, drives me nuts. I mean, my wife will laugh at me about this. When it's my birthday and people on Facebook say happy birthday to you, I make sure I respond to every single person. I don't care if it's 400, 500 people. I'm going to respond to everyone, because that's how I view relationship. I value people. And if you take the time to say happy birthday to me, I'm going to make the time. It takes me a couple days to make sure I say thank you. So not responding to all of the comments that you guys are putting on these videos, you're killing me. We appreciate it, though. So we will take time periodically to address the things that you guys say, because we're learning, and we don't want people to feel like you're alone. If it's being a black woman in America and dealing with the police harassing you, if it's being a really light-skinned black woman in America and not feeling like you really have anywhere to fit in, or if it's being a black man in America who is so untrusting of white folks. I don't want to have any white friends. Look, man, we can identify with every one of those feelings, with every one of those emotions. We may not be able to speak to it from a place of full understanding, but we want you to know you're not alone. So we will take time to address those things, to answer some of the comments that you guys make when we can. And I want to say to people like Mike and Kimberly, keep giving us that kind of feedback, because that's just going to draw us closer together, which is ultimately what this is about, drawing people together, bridging gaps between history, between Africans on the continent and the diaspora, and between all of mankind. We're not going to survive if we don't come together and stop the foolishness. Mm-hmm. So we appreciate the feedback from each and every one of you, and we want you to know that. So with that, you guys keep pushing. Get to the continent. Mm-hmm. Visit the dungeons. And man, love on one another. I don't care who you are or who you're dealing with, man. This whole thing is about relationships, the most valuable thing you have on this planet. Take care of the people that you love. Tell them you love them. Treat them well, and I don't care what they look like. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.